Yeah, LNH honestly better mental fitness number 4. I'm really excited. This is going great. We have some great content. We're getting video recorded here, and it's going to be out on YouTube soon. So it's spreading far and wide. And then a lot of people are also taking advantage of the one-on-ones with Travis, which are powerful individuals. And I know Travis has some new things set up that we're going to go back and forth on. Thank you all for attending. Very excited for Honestly Better Mental Fitness number 4. Travis, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. How are you feeling? You can either respond or just take a second to think about how you're feeling for a minute. I think I was leaving some space and gap in there because the question of small talk came in and making people feel comfortable. I also think that's space to know how you feel and not run to being comforted, I think is something that's interesting as well, of like what comes up in those moments of silence for us. Just allowing like energy to move, energy to flow, see what's there. Worked a lot on a lot of different patterns with people, whether it's going straight to my cell phone unconsciously without even thinking about it, whether it's as soon as I get together with a group of people, it's give me a drink. There's a moment of silence of like slight, I don't know what to do with this space, and quickly, let's fill it, let's fill it, let's fill it. And I say maybe move the other direction. Allow space, like allow space for discovery. For discovery of who we are, what we feel, and to be able to make a conscious choice with that. Do I need to do that? Am I grabbing a drink, or am I snacking, or am I eating food, or grabbing this cookie, or whatever it is because I'm hungry, or because I'm bored, I'm uncomfortable, I'm trying to fill space or time? A lot of the work that we've been doing has just been creating awareness of our thoughts, our behavior patterns, our communication, our conversations with others, our interaction with others. And that's a lot of it, just creating awareness. And I've had numerous conversations that created a new awareness of a new feeling of pattern. And maybe for you, it's that drink, or it's that snack, or whatever that is for you. And just knowing that as you go to reach for it and be like, hold on, wait a minute, why am I doing this, is enough to make a rapid and radical shift in someone's life. I've gotten awesome feedback from what we've been doing. And I'm really am excited to dive into this next one here. Today, we're going to be going into family, and really family through the lens of better understanding who we are and who we were conditioned to be, and maybe who we think we are, but we're actually not. And I think it's a good place to start, like our origin. How did we come to be in this world? If we want to talk about change, which is an interesting thing that we've talked about, it's like, well, what are we trying to change, and what are we doing within that? And I think before we change a system, it's almost best to deeply understand the system and how it got to be from there. Today is a conversation like all the others. Pop in anytime you want to ask questions, to reflect, to comment. I welcome all of that. It is more of a conversation and less of a lecture. That said, I'll bring in lots of interesting things to talk about. Some science research stuff. And again, it's not for you to memorize or anything else. This is, I really want you to reflect on how does it impact your life? Not that these are external things that you have to learn, but these are internal things that to allow to impact you. And that's what I would say the right orientation or attitude towards this talk. Moving through, what does this bring up for you? And keeping that awareness of how does this make you feel or impact you? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Make you feel excited, warm, scared, nervous? Oh, please tell me I have my right quote here. I don't. I have a quote that I'll hit in a little bit that I think is in that moment. Actually, no, I'm gonna hit it now. We're gonna go back. Yeah, it's a Nietzsche quote. You can tell much about a man's character by how much truth he can tolerate. I think it's interesting. There's a lot in there. And a bit of what I'm offering both in the individual sessions and in what we are now is the way things are. And going back to our beginning of like silence and filling it and drinks and uncomfortable, so much of our patterns or behaviors of life that we don't like, maybe it's anxiety, or maybe it's rushing, or maybe it's yelling, or maybe it's a constant doing busyness that we fill our lives with, that we move from one thing to the next and we feel exhaustion. Maybe it's being irritated, maybe it's being depressed, whatever it happens to be. A lot of times it comes down to avoiding something, avoiding how we feel. It's a solution to a problem. It's usually a poor solution to a problem that allows the problem to continue. I feel uncomfortable, I go for alcohol or a drink, okay? I'm trying to shield myself from the truth of how I feel. What truth am I trying to hide from? That I don't want to be here, that I don't like what I'm doing, that I'm not comfortable with who I am and the choices I'm making in life. What is it? What is it that you're trying to numb? What is it that you're trying to run from that you can't tolerate? Cool. Now that I brought all of us way down, we can get started here to a somber place here. This will be a fun one. Cool. So we're talking about family relationships, and we're starting there because our primary family relationships are the most influential factors on how we think about ourselves, the world, and the people in it. What the world, my playground and a good safe place, is the world like somewhere I want to hide from that I don't like myself? You know, the good things and bad things. Well, what are they? In so many times it's viewed from a different perspective. Like this thing that I think is not good about me, viewed from another perspective, is actually incredible. Like is maybe my unique ability that's just in the wrong context or wasn't appreciated by the family relationships that I was in. And so how we think about ourselves is massively impacted in other people. And so if we want to share, or if you just want to think about it, it's okay. I want you to think about what word comes to mind when you think about family. Could be family in general. Could be your family. And when I'm talking about family here, if you are a mother or a father, I'm talking more about your family of origin, the family that you grew up in, your parents, and more specifically when you were young growing up in that family. If we want to share, we can share. We just want to sit in a moment of silence and think to ourselves of what feelings does that bring up for me?
For me, the word responsibility comes to mind.
Thank you. Okay. You can just allow that to sit for a moment of what is, if I have one word that I'm thinking about family, or it can be a feeling, whatever it is, like what is the general impression that I have when I look at that? Really, we are diving in this topic to better understand ourselves. Put undiscovering the mystery of who we are is discovering how we've been shaped. And I think the unlearning is a lot of times the things that we think we are actually not us, or the things that were conditioned within us. And to learn who we really are is to unlearn what the world has taught us about ourselves. And diving into our family origins is part of that process. I brought up earlier change, and this whole concept of mental fitness was that you can change. Like, fitness is, nobody looks at their body the way it is, whether they're whatever shape their body is, and just says, this is just me the way I am, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. Everybody knows there's things you can do to change your current fitness level. You exercise a lot, you lift a lot of things, you build muscle, right? Your cardiovascular system goes down. Like, they're systems that respond to what you do. And in mental fitness, it's the same thing. They're all the different components of mental fitness are a matter of practice as well. Now, does that apply to every single thing? And that's a little bit about what we're discussing here. I think a lot of times when we get into working individual, a lot of times the things we're trying to change, we're an introvert trying to be an extrovert. If everybody knows those terms, introverts is somebody that's more likes quiet time, likes space. Extroverts more likes external, like they like to connect, and they like loud places, and they like loud spaces, and they think there's something wrong because the people around them are extroverts and they're an introvert. So they're trying to be more like that other. And so what they want to change is not something actually necessarily to change, but to embrace. And I would say maybe more often than not, I'm not sure that I can say for sure, but a lot of times I can say it's actually learning to embrace and see ourselves from a different lens. See that what we once viewed as weaknesses or flaws in ourself or in our character are actually the things that make us unique and our strength. Knowing what is me and what is my conditioning is a little bit what we're going to examine. And it's a journey, it's a process, it's something that we spend over time figuring out, oh, this thing that I've been doing isn't actually something I care about. This is just something that I was conditioned to do, that I was rewarded when I did and punished when I didn't. And so this little voice in my head that's always saying this, actually, that's not really me. And that's not really something I want to keep following. What do I actually want? Am I this way naturally, or is this because of my experiences in life? And I think of maybe someone that struggles with anxiety, right? That's just the way I am. I'm just anxious. I'm just nervous. I'm just this. And, are you really? Could be, maybe. Or have you had a lot of experiences in life that have caused you to become fearful and anxious about what's coming in the future? There was a dog I met a while back, and walked in the door, and most animals generally love me, and I'm very good with animals. And my sons walked into this friend's house, or my wife walked in, and the dog ran up, and then my sons walked in, and the dog ran up, and it was a happy dog. And then I walked in, and the dog like started cowering and runs into the corner like I just came in with a chainsaw and I'm gonna attack this dog. And is just an interesting thing to me. I think a lot of times we were like, what's wrong with this dog? What did I do? Like, we take it personally, right? And that's probably a big metaphor for how we respond to others in life. It's just them being them, but we're always looking at it for like, well, what did I do? What's this dog's problem? And that sort of stuff. But I think a deeper thing for the lesson for what we're doing today is my thought immediately goes to, what happened with this dog with someone that's maybe my height or my build or a man or whatever it is that happened that created this dog to be this way. And we can say, it's just this, the dog's just this way, right? Or it's probably more likely there was experiences that created imprints on this person. And I put the term neurobiological adaptive responses. Neurobiological, so brain body, we talked about the brain body connection. Adaptive, this dog learned to fear people that look like me, and its survival mechanism, its way of adapting to life was to run from people that look like me and to get away because those people aren't safe. And responses, right? That was the adaptive response that they have. But how much in our life is that conditioning? I don't think that dog was born that way. Could have been. It's possible. Probably not. Probably that dog had some experiences in life that impacted and shaped that behavior, that feeling in there. And so some of the questions are, what in you is like that dog? What in you, in the way you respond, behave, is your conditioning from your experiences in life versus who you really deeply are? Some of the questions I put out here: what parts of me would remain the same if I were born in a different family? If I were born in a different town? I definitely see some patterns in Gillette there of getting to talk to 30-ish people individually and get to know. There's patterns. There's patterns in your town that are not the same in my town. What if all those people in your town were in my town or my town there? There are things in there that we pick up, we absorb without even thinking about. I don't know, maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the people that were first there. Maybe it's a whole lot of different things, right? Or in a entirely different country. How radically different would we be if we grew up in the jungle on a culture that lives on the river and fishes for a living, right? A more agricultural, rural. How would we still feel, believe, and experience life the same the way we do now? And this is a bit of the mental fitness component in dividing, like, what is truly deep down me versus what is my conditioning. And if it's my conditioning, then I can change it. And if it's truly deep down me, then there's a level of honor it, be it, embrace it. One more example of a bit of how conditioning work and how young it starts. And that's a lot of it. You might think, well, I can't remember anything ever happening that would make me feel this way, experience this way. I didn't have any bad experience with people that look like me. This dog might not remember or may remember. And so to give you an idea of how young learning takes place, I had a professor when I was in grad school that was a behaviorist, which they don't look at internal motivations, belief systems, meaning anything. They just purely look at external behavior. And it's interesting how much they can do. And they're the ones that, if you've been to SeaWorld or any like animal training things for movies, like they're using behaviorist mechanisms to get certain behaviors to certain animals to do certain actions by simple reward mechanisms or conditioning, which is what I'm going to describe of how it works here. So his wife was pregnant with his first child, and it's probably not a good idea, so don't do this. But his wife was pregnant with her first child and was in the bathtub, and he noticed when he put his hand on his wife's belly that like he could sort of feel the child moving around there and responded to it. So then he put his hand on his wife's belly and then he smacked the side of the bathtub. And then he felt like a kick and a jolt. And then he did it a few more times, hand on the belly, smack the bathtub, hand on the belly, smack the bathtub. And every time he smacked the bathtub, the baby inside the belly still jolted. And pretty soon, hand on the belly, the baby jolts. The baby jumps without even having to smack the bathtub because the baby knows what comes next. Someone puts a hand on the belly, it means I'm about to get smacked and there's going to be a loud sound here. And it had already learned, okay, it's starting to predict, which is what part of what makes us beautiful prediction machines, right? And so we know, oh man, someone's getting amped up. I know what happens next. Like, great. Or social settings, groups of friends, I know what happens next. I'm going to get picked on, whatever it happens to be. Like we are sort of predicting. So anxiety is prediction. It's a prediction of a future negative outcome. And so that baby now, he just trained his baby to have anxiety every time that someone puts his hand on the belly. You're doing it wrong. I think a lot of times what we're doing is the try harder. And I think I gave you that example of the introvert trying harder to be an extrovert because the people around them are extroverts and they're the good ones and, they're not good, or the whole family, they don't understand them. They're different. They're different in some way. And so they view that differentness not as uniqueness that they are embracing and moving towards, but I want to be like the rest of the group, and the rest of the group doesn't like it when I am say no to going out. I don't want to drink with them or whatever it is. And so I think often we're in this mode of like trying harder when we need a completely different paradigm shift. And I think of it as a race car on a golf course. Like it can keep trying to be a better golf cart, but it's never going to be what it needs to be, right? It should be on the racetrack, or the golf cart on the racetrack. Like it can try harder, sure, like, but it's in the wrong spot. Like it's a fish out of water in here. It's not what it's meant to be. And so I think a lot of times we're that golf cart on the racetrack trying harder to race with the other, as opposed to embracing what makes us unique. And Mike will, I know, talks a lot about that, like in working within your unique ability, like within your gift. And I think that's part of this is sometimes like, do I change things that have been conditioned to do? Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times it's accepting and embracing who we are is the change.
The unique ability, I think that comes up pretty strong for me. I went through my unique ability about a year ago with strategic coach, 2 years ago, did a self-study on it. And I think, Travis, you'll have something to add to this. I think there's a culture in the United States where and definitely in my family, it's definitely from my dad, that you're going to find what you're not good at, and you're going to get really good at it, right? So you're going to spend an absorbent amount of time working on things that you're not good at. And that really is a United States attitude. And it came over from Europe originally. So the Europeans were very much that way. So your dad wouldn't be happy about what you're good at. He would find the 2 or 3 things that you're not good at and beat the hell out of you and make you spend an absorbent amount of time getting good at that. There's other cultures that don't do that. They're like, well, let's figure out what your unique ability is, and let's work on that and find you a life and a job that fits that. That works much easier. I think that what I found as I did my unique ability and I started giving myself permission to not do things that were not of my unique ability, it was really a shift because I think we've all been programmed, especially in Wyoming. In Wyoming, you have to do everything yourself. So you've got to get up and do it. And that's still true. There's some things that I just have to do, right, that don't fit my unique ability. But what you find very quickly when you do this work is there's a ton of things that you're just doing because you feel like you're supposed to and you have to, and that's what's expected of you. And if you give yourself permission not to do that, then you free up a ton of time to work on things that are in your unique ability, which is a really interesting subject as well, because the things that are in your unique ability, you're so good at them that you take them for granted. You think everybody's really good at these things. You're like, yeah, that's just what I do. Once you realize that that's what people value you for, then and you start spending more of your time doing it, you're way faster at it, you're way better at it, people are loving it. And then you some of those things that aren't in your unique ability still need done. The trick is go find somebody that has those as a unique ability that would just love to take those off your plate and give those things to them, and then take the things that you want to do. And there's another interesting point in there, another interesting reason to figure out your unique ability is don't stop doing things that are in your unique ability. It'll make you miserable. So, keep doing, even if you think it's dumb and I shouldn't be doing that because it doesn't match my position or my job title or the fact that I'm the dad of the family. If you love doing something and it's in your unique ability, keep doing it. So as a subject I'm passionate about, and there's a lot there. And so I'm spending I used to spend 35% of my time in unique ability. Now it's 90 plus. And then I encourage all of my people to do the same. And it's changed my life. It's changed a lot of their lives. And we have resources. If anybody wants to do a deep dive on it, it's Unique Ability 2.0 from Strategic Coach that Stacy can hook you up with a copy of it, or you can buy it on Amazon. We probably got some copies floating around, but very powerful subject.
That's great. I think some of what that is learning to embrace who you are.
Yes.
And it is not the there's a few things that are coming to me of work that we've done of like, I don't know why I just can't concentrate, and I'm having trouble focusing, and I'm here to work on my focus. And it's like, well, you're a physical moving action person trying to do computer desk work. Like, that's not the right place. And so this is the try harder. I think we're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm broken. I can't focus. I probably need some medication or something like that, right? And it's like, no, you're just in the wrong spot. Move to the unique ability, the thing that you enjoy, and it feels effortless. It's not to say that all life is always effortless and there's never hard work or anything like that in there. But I think even when you're in that unique ability, when you're in a space that is embracing of who you are, it's hard work, but it feels right. It feels more effortless, more flowing, as opposed to pushing a rock uphill.
Yeah, and that's a great word, flow, because I'm also obsessed about getting in flow. And if you're I'm convinced if you're in unique ability, if you're working in your unique ability, you can drop into flow very easily, which is a beautiful thing. When you're in flow, you're going to get 5 times the work done in the same amount of time, and you're going to love every minute of it. And time's going to, either stand still or fly by. It'll be warped. Giving yourself permission to stay in unique ability is counterintuitive in Wyoming, in the United States, in my family. And I guarantee you, my dad, he loved me and he wanted the best for me. He just thought the best for me was to be good at something, to figure out the thing that I'm not good at, right? And poke at it, right? And sometimes that's true, I think. And a lot of times it's not. It's just us going to the negative, right? So flipping to negative and saying, yeah, all of this stuff is beautiful and great, but let's poke at this thing that's not. And we do that to ourselves in our own mind, to your point. So even though my dad's been gone for almost 20 years, it was still in the back of my mind that I had to do these things that I wasn't good at and didn't like doing. Sometimes that's true. So I still do some things that aren't in my unique ability, but I've chosen that I want them to be in my unique ability. And therefore I need to practice them, and I need to grind through these. Chat GPT is one right now. I'm having to, spend time figuring this out. It's uncomfortable. I don't really like it, but I've got a goal in mind. I want that to be one of my unique abilities. So it's not, I won't ever be 100% in unique ability, because you need that 10% where you're practicing to add capabilities to your unique ability.
Right.
But 90% in unique abilities are rare. It's rare. If you can get to that, your life is going to be amazing.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great place to move towards. I think that's good examples. Thank you. Yeah, many times it's not the thing that changes. We don't the thing that we're trying to change doesn't change. The way we look at the thing is what changes. And I think that's a bit of like, that's not my strength, that's not my ability. I'm moving towards something else, or using a different lens. There's a interesting study on, actually it was psilocybin, which is a psychedelic that creates a powerful revelatory experience that was given to people that were dying, that had diagnosed with some terminal illness or disease, and they were experiencing severe anxiety and depression. And then after these experiences, they had significantly lessened, like 80%, anxiety or depression about it, and they found real peace towards it. And why I bring this in was just really interesting is the thing didn't change. They're still dying. Like, death is still coming for them. How they viewed it changed. And I think a lot of times, I think our Marcus Aurelius quote in there, it's like, we see the suffering as external. Like, it's the thing out there. And if I could change the thing out there, that's the thing that's causing me anxiety or depression or suffering. But it's actually not. Most of the time, it's internal. It's how we view it. I'm not good at this thing, as Mike was talking about, right? And I have suffering and anxiety and depression because I'm not good at this thing. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's okay. That's because that's not my thing. This is my thing over here. And so it's not so much that in this mental fitness concept that we're going to change everything and make everything different. A lot of times it's embracing who we are and changing how we see things. I might say uncovering the rules that you are living by. Sometimes we're living by someone else's rules. And I heard Mike talking about that. Like, that's not my values. That's somebody else's values. I'm trying to live and play life by somebody else's rules. Like, this isn't the game that I want to play. And so it's a massive paradigm shift or an operating system change. Not how do I make it faster? How do I get better at this game? But I'm playing the wrong game entirely. So some of the questions I have for you of, are you living the life you want to live? Or are you living based off your conditioning and patterning? And spending some time on, okay, like if I completely cleared the slate, who would I be? Who would I choose to be? If I were to start over, what life would I live? And as kids, and really probably in life in general, we only know ourselves through the reflection of others. And this is partly why these isolation tanks where you spend time with complete separate sensory deprivation, and we've talked about like our worst punishment for society is isolation, or what's the right word? Solitary confinement. And it's hard to even know we exist without some sort of input from our environment. When you're in pure blackness and complete sensory deprivation, it's actually hard not to panic. Like, yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon. It's like, who am I if I don't get to see myself and the reflection of others? And so some of the questions I have for you are, what are the core messages you received about yourself, about the world, about maybe men or women? Men are this way, women are that way, whatever it happens to be, or friends or relationship. I heard responsibility as one of them. Like, okay, life is about making sure you take responsibility for others, right? Or yourself, or being responsible. It's like, well, who am I responsible for? And what is it that I'm responsible for doing? Is that the purpose of my life, is to make sure I do these things that other people set for me? Who choose, who decides, right? Is it to enjoy, to play? Is it okay to play, to have fun? Or is that not okay? What about money? Is money the root of all evil? Or is money the thing to chase? That's the most important currency of the world. Hard work is like the top ethic, or is it about the goal? And idiot, why are you working so hard when you can go this way and that way and you can get it 10 times easier? Like, these are the invisible beliefs that we carry. Learned responses, how we respond to anger. Is anger a tool? Like, anger is the tool? Someone's not doing something, you get angry? Or is anger bad? And anger is not okay. And if you show anger, then you're going to go off by yourself, because that's not okay. Discomfort. Oh, you're feeling bad? Here's have a snack. You're feeling bad? Here, come watch some TV. You're feeling bad? Oh, let me make you feel better. Like, is it okay to sit in discomfort? What about silence? What about insults? If someone insults you, what are you supposed to do? Take it, turn the other cheek, or you better get out there and fight. You can't let somebody do that to you. Hurt, sadness, is it okay to cry? Is it okay not to cry? Is it not okay to not cry? Hey, you're not sad about this. There's something wrong with you. Or maybe, hey, what are you doing crying about this? There must be something wrong with you. What messages about yourself or the world did you take from your family? How did it impact you? How is it still impacting you? And I think there's an interesting mindset to understand here. And I put it as, for children, the default is my fault. Children see the world as if something happens, it's because they did it. It's their fault or responsibility. If dad left, it's because I'm not good enough. Dad's angry, it's because I screwed something up. And I brought in that dog example earlier of like the dog that ran and cowered from me, right? Like if I walked in the door, what did I do? If I were a child, the child would probably be hurt because the dog doesn't like me. What did I do to hurt this child as opposed to understanding the deeper in that? Okay, that's where we're starting. Let's dive in. So in looking at how childhood impacts us as adults. As adults, we see ourselves as fundamentally shy, bad-tempered, anxious, low energy, when we are often, for good or bad, that way as the result of the environment we grew up in. We live in the present, looking through the lens of the past. And I think that our dog was a great example right there, right? The dog is in the present, but he's looking at me through the lens of the past, of people like me that he's seen in there. That's what he's reacted to. And that's all of us. That's all of us. In each moment, we are judging and interpreting our experience moment by moment. It's pretty much impossible not to. The only thing we can do is become aware of our judgments and interpretations of that. Beliefs about ourselves as a result of our upbringings, we'll call it. As children, things that happen to us are received as being because of us. He is not there because I'm not good enough. She's mean or sad because I can't get it right. Responsibility, and I'm not putting on this one, you, Claudia, because you said one word, but I'm using this one as an example here that could be. If mom's sad or depressed, it's because I'm not a good enough kid. And so then it becomes my responsibility to take care of this person, because clearly there's something that I'm not doing. There's, I just said that we look at the world and we're judging it and interpreting it all the time, which is true. And kids are a little bit different, especially younger. There's literally a different brain state. They're more in a theta brain state, where we're going to be more in a beta brain state. And we receive the world differently. And I think one of the examples and the ways that is most apparent and most factually apparent is in language learning. Adults have difficult time learning new languages because we're like interpreting it and filtering it, and like we have to think our way through it. Okay, that word that I'm trying to say, okay, that word goes to this word, connect the dots. Okay, yeah, this is the word I'm looking for. But that's not the way speech works, and that's not the way language learning works. Where kids are more like sponges. It just happens. It isn't going through a filter of thought. It's just the thing that happens, and it's in here. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by the filter of thought again. Well, if we go back to our baby in the bathtub example, the baby's nervous system just registers sensation to anxiety. A smack is coming. It's not thinking, oh, wait a minute, someone's rubbing the belly again. I know what happens when rubbing the belly. I'm about to get smacked, so I'm going to prepare myself to get smacked again. Like there's no thought that happens between those two reactions, where a lot of times we have more thought. And so we're putting the language learning filter through this like thought process of judgment. Do I agree with that? What do I think about that? What do I feel about that? Where they are just receiving. They are like clay that is just being molded without thinking about, is this the way that I want to mold the clay? And they learn those languages so well because they're not thinking about it. They're just receiving it. And so in the same way that they're interpreting the environment around them, they're not thinking about it. They're just receiving it. It just happens. They're just there. Mom's sad. I see that as a reflection of me, because I know a me through the reflection of others. I know I exist because as I move through the world, things move around me. And so that is fundamentally the way they take it. If only I could be better, then they may be better. Here's another example. People treat me this way because somehow I deserve it. Maybe a parent that's abusive or harsh or critical. It's not, wow, this person's an asshole. What's their problem? Right? It's, oh man, I screwed up again. If only I could get this right. Like I keep trying. Okay, I'm going to try harder. This is where we're going back into our try harder again, right? Like try harder next time. Next time I'll be better. Next time I'll do this. Next time I'll do that. I'll try there. And this is why part of the reasons that the most fundamentally destructive thing we can do to kids is like unpredictability, where it's just randomness. Kind one day, they do this action and they're kind, or nobody cares, and then the next day they do that same action and then they're getting abused for it, and they can't figure out the pattern, or it's random. Why? And there's just no rhyme or reason behind it, is one of the most destructive things for kids. And so if people are treating me poorly, if I'm being bullied in school, it must because something in me. It's not them, it's me. It's my fault. I'm flawed. Beliefs about the world. As children, we make large-scale generalizations about the world based on our very limited interactions with a limited amount of people. And just think of your judgments and perceptions. If I say, tell me about business people, tell me about computer people, tell me about teenagers, tell me about, whatever, you'd have things that you could say, right? It's stereotypes, but it's also your beliefs in there and is what you feel. And then think of like how many people you actually know that fit into those boxes. 3, 10, 100, 300, and we're generalizing it to how many billions of people in the world, right? We are making these massive, large-scale generalizations, and really most of the time it's coming from our small family. 5 people, 8 people, 3 people, whatever it is. People in authority are, because I had one bad experience as a kid of someone here, now all people in authority are this way. People can be trusted, can't be trusted. We don't respond to the one person or the one event that it was. It became imprinted on us, going back to our dog again, right? Probably had one really bad experience with one person that looked like me, and now forever, everyone that looks like me is that. And I'm not saying that as an insult, like that's smart. There's a way, like in our nervous system, it is better to see a threat when there is none than to miss a threat. And so it's better to like assume everything's a threat until it's proven okay, than it is to trust and then find out you shouldn't have. So our nervous system is biased to it. And you can think of it's better to assume that a garden hose is a snake, pause for a second, jump back, and then realize, oh, it's just a garden hose and move on, than to assume a snake is a garden hose and not pay attention to it and step on it and get bit, because you might only make that mistake once. So our nervous system is more geared to see threats when there are not. And that's part of our nervous system response in here.
I think that's a really interesting one just to double click on, Travis, and that is the looking at the negative or being nervous about the garden hose being a snake, or spending your whole time, I lean way towards, not worrying about the risk as much as most people. So I lean towards just going and not worrying about those risks. And that's worked well for me in my life.
Right.
The negative bias of people is what you're clicking on there, and that being foundational to our brain, that we want to focus. We're not going to talk about the 10 things that are amazing. We're going to talk about the 2 things that suck right now. And that is, I don't have that brain trap as much as most people, but I think it's still there. And I think most people don't have to be too concerned about the missing something negative and dangerous. They have to be concerned about overlooking all of the positive things that are happening in their life, because they're obsessed about the 1 or 2 negative things that will always be there, right? Even those of us that are very optimistic and positive, there's negative things. If I want to really stop and think about it and write them down, I can find them. I choose not to. But I see so many people that are just crippled by always going to whatever's negative, which is ever present.
Absolutely. And it's why like gratitude meditations, gratitude practices, journaling, 3 things you're grateful for in the beginning or end of each day is so powerful, because we miss all of the things we have because we're so focused on the things that we don't.
Right.
And it's the orientation towards life, right? Like, how do we can go through life looking at the things that we don't have, and it almost goes back to our unique abilities again, right? It's the race car wishing it was an off-road truck, right? Oh man, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this, right? Like, but this is, look what you can do here, and we miss all the beautiful things about our life because we're so focused on what we don't have. I brought it in not to say that, like, yes, so orient your life that way towards the negative. I bring it in as this is one of our base instincts and is why that is there. From a purely survival mechanistic standpoint, that is where a lot of the origins or the root of that is there. And is that something to strive to overcome? Yeah, absolutely. Just as I think you're saying a lot of your success has come from not being afraid to step into those things and, you know, looking at the positives instead of the negatives.
You know, the children are growing up thinking everything that happens in their world is their fault. I mean, that was following me through my life. How many adults does it follow into their life? Just taking the blame for everything that's happening around them, or anybody that's mad around them, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that very common, or is it half of adults, or, you know, what's the
oh,
split?
probably more. Yeah, I mean, it's all of us to a degree, right? Someone yells at us and we go to the, what did I do wrong? And then as you given us some great examples in the past, we're like, okay, hold on, actually, maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe this is this other person. I should move towards them and ask and talk about it. And but I think a base level instinct is always to, what did I do?
Yeah, which I still check in with that, but not nearly as much as I used to. I'm still like, okay, did I do something that I shouldn't have here? Is there part of this? And then if I can't find it, I'm like, okay, like you said, I'll go talk to them and say, what's going on? I don't see what's happening here. And you usually find out they're just in a bad mood, something completely unrelated. But
yeah, we absolutely continue to interpret things as our fault. I mean, the world always revolves around us, right? we experience it that way, for good or bad. Kids, what's different about kids is they actually don't have the capacity to think our way through it, like you just gave us that example of.
Yeah, so
that's the difference.
Once you hit adulthood, you should be able to reason through that. And as a child, you're just going to assume it's something you did because you're the center of your own universe, right?
Right. Yeah. They're not able to move to those levels of thinking where we do have the capacity if we choose to.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's it. This is this whole awareness thing, but we don't have the ability to do that if we're not aware that we're doing it. We're automatically in that default state of, what did I do? What's wrong? How did I screw this up? Then we don't have the capacity. But as once we come to the awareness of like, oh, I'm reacting that way. Is that true? Is it really that way? Or is it possible that there? Okay, cool. Let's go have this conversation and find out. But most of the time we've already moved into a defensive state, right? Well, I didn't, and but you did this, and right before we even have the chance to investigate.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Well, one thing I wanted to share before we move on here is to talk about like different brain states. I know we're kind of locked into one and almost the others seem non-existent. Getting to do a lot of the work I do of in kind of the neuroscience world and measuring brain states and being able to shift into different brain states and seeing other people in that or going into those other states myself and knowing that it is phenomenal and truly feels like other worlds and becomes very real on understanding like what it might be like a kid, because kids are more in theta states. When you go into theta states, it's a wild world and you can't string together words very well. Like you can be like, yeah, there's that that color, it's dark, like, oh, black, like, you know, you can't even can't even like judge or discriminate against different things, but that you have access to this like whole other deeper world sometimes. And so I know sometimes it feels like, no, I can't even imagine a time where I couldn't think about this or would be able to receive that, but it absolutely is. And then as you become aware of it, you start to catch yourself more. It's almost like if I think of you never smelled cigarette smoke before, something like that. And so you might not pick up on it, or maybe in the machine shop there's a smell of a certain oil, right? Like an oil smells a certain way, and I could probably walk through it and I wouldn't pick it up, but somebody else that knows the smell of that oil really strongly be like, somebody's using this oil around here, right? And it's a little bit of that in the brain states of like, I can start to become aware of like, oh, this is happening in me right now, and I'm becoming aware of what's happening in that. And this is a bit of that awareness of the once you've seen, you can never unsee. Once you've smelled that oil, you'll pick it up anywhere that you see it. And did somebody spill that oil in the office here? Like I smell it where I might just walk in and be like, it smells kind of funny in here, and not even register it at all. Right. Communication patterns. So we talked about communication a lot in words. Communication is also something that comes up from childhood, just like everything else. When something is wrong, kids often can't explain. Actually, that's partly what I was just talking about, right? It's hard to put into words. You can almost think if you have a dream that is so incredible, it's hard to put words to it, or a feeling, or I don't know, the birth of your child, or some experience that you had that was so powerful. The word is ineffable, which is like undescribable. There are no words for it. And so I think kids a lot of times are that way, like they don't have the words to articulate what it is that they're feeling. And so they often have dramatic overreactions, dramatizing, exploding, tantrums, or underreactions, avoiding, ignoring, suppressing, that we tend to carry in adulthood. My question for is, what's yours, right? Like Mike was talking about earlier of moving towards or away from conflict. And that was patterns that we picked up in there. And it's patterns that we pick up from other people of what do they do. And it's also patterns that we practice. Maybe there was no space in your life to disagree with people. And so you didn't. And so you didn't have a chance to react to things. Your method of dealing with conflict is to stuff it all down and move on. Right? And so examining some of these communication patterns. I think the ideal is learning to move towards the issue. And as Mike gave us a good example earlier, and simply explain or ask without expectation of conflict or rejection. And without taking or avoiding responsibility when appropriate is the key to healthy communication. I think in my silly dog example I gave, if the dog was a person, it could be like, talk with them, right? Hey, did I do something? And they might be like, well, you didn't, something else came from here, right? As opposed to, what's your problem? What's your problem with me, right? That's probably how we would deal with it if it was conflict, or I would just assume the person doesn't like me and avoid them and go the opposite direction and never bring it up in them.
I think another important one for nowadays in communication is if there is a conflict, don't text them. In the texting world, that is not a way to deal with the deal. You know, call them at best face to face, but at least hear their voice, hear the tone. I've seen so many people trying to resolve conflict via text or email. It's a terrible format. When you believe there's conflict going on, or they do, you imagine a lot of tone that can't be resolved via text or email. So.
Last one, taking responsibility. Trying to fix what we cannot. Kids see everything as their fault and therefore try to fix. And this one's an interesting one. It's often to address their own emotional needs. Kids are completely reliant for their survival on their parents, their caregivers. And as a survival mechanism, if the caregiver isn't giving them the care that they need, then their best chance at survival is to help the caregiver get back on their feet to be able to take care of them. And I might have talked about it, like, what does it mean to help another individual, and why would you want to help? There's a great book by Ram Dass called How Can I Help? Of like, why the desire. If you are the type of person that has this strong desire to fix or help, or almost can't find yourself not able to help yourself in trying to help or give advice or comfort or console or whatever it is, a lot of times it's because of our own emotional state. You being uncomfortable makes me feel uncomfortable, so then I'm going to try to make you feel comfortable so then I can feel comfortable. Letting go of responsibility for others is another step, and letting go of the past, and a step forward to being into the present, which is where people really need us to be, with them in the present, not trying to fix them. Okay, we're gonna spend maybe 10 minutes going into core needs of a kid on a bit of a scientific level, physiologically, and through a attachment theory lens, which is a particular theory about where a lot of behavior patterns as adults come from. And if it's interesting to you, it's a really cool thing to dive into, and especially it's powerful in like romantic relationships, because romantic relationships often mirror our family relationships. And so if you're wondering, why do I always fall for this type of person, or get in this type of relationship, or always end up being left, or being the one to leave, or whatever it is, a lot of the dynamics get played out in attachment theory, and there's kind of tools and guidelines we probably won't have time to get into today. That could be a topic for another day, but there's a lot of depth into this. And so if you think about a kid, some animals in the wild are born and then they're self-sufficient. They're on their feet within 10 minutes and they're moving on and they don't need anything else. Humans are one of the longest, like I don't know how long it is until we're self-sufficient, but it's measured in years, not days, and maybe even decades, and maybe and it's getting longer and longer, right? Kids are on our insurance policies till they're 28 now, I think it is, and so that's kind of how. So in saying that, what I'm saying is that our kids' survival is completely at the discretion of the parent, or is dependent on the caregiver. Right? And so the attachment is like, there's almost like secure attachment or insecure attachment. And this is essentially, there's two parts to it. It's like the proximity to a responsive caregiver. And when we are securely attached or not securely attached, yeah, I bring this one in because it's one of the ones that have been studied for a long time. And if you look at kids that are maybe raised in foster homes, or not necessarily foster homes, but like, I think that's the right word, foster homes, and World War II, where there's a whole ton of babies and there was so little caregivers that they didn't have time to pick up the babies. It was like they got their diaper changed and fed twice a day and that's it. And so you can think on a level of like, well, they got their diaper changed and fed twice a day. They survived through it. So they survived and it should be fine. But there are psychological impacts to that happen. And I think we talked about like the primates and gorillas, about how we are fundamentally social creatures that need each other and need that contact. And a little bit of that is we see ourselves through the reflection of others, right? So how do we know what we are and what impacts happen when we have responsive people that are warm and caring and loving and physical contact and respond to our needs, and what happens when we don't? And so that first one is what we're talking about. That's essentially secure attachment. So proximity to responsive caregivers. Are they picked up, carried, held? When they cry, do people respond? Is it heard? Is it received? These are things that start to get ingrained in us and have certain developmental processes that impact and shape who we are as human beings. And human offspring can't survive alone. The second one is acceptance in the group. Are we loved and accepted as we are? And this, a lot of times, the first question is, am I safe? Is the world safe? Are there people that care about me? And the answer to the second question is it safe to be me? Do I listen to my own feelings and response? Or when I cry, is it not heard? Or maybe am I punished when I reach out to that? And so then that has some responses, and what we were talking about just a little while ago of the, do I move towards conflict or away from conflict? If my needs are not met when I reach out, I probably don't. If my needs are met, well, then I'm probably more likely to reach out and met. Put ready, fire, aim here, because I think that's a bit appropriate. I think most parents, whether we're parents ourselves or whether we're talking about our parents, have kids and they're 9 years old before we even start to get this thing figured out in the slightest, and probably more like 18 or 20 or maybe 40 or how old before we start to get this parenting thing figured out. And so much of our development happens in the first like 0 to 3 years. I shared the before they're even born, when you're still in the belly, you're learning about your environment, right? And so much is shaped between 0 and 3. And so that's why you might be like, oh, I don't remember anything happening like this. Oh, and when you get into some really deep work and memories from really young start to emerge and surface, and it's really, really powerful. That's actually one thing if you're want to do something on your own, like what's your earliest memory? And if you stop and take 10 seconds now to think about it, or if you want to sit and think about it later, there's a lot of philosophies that have powerful meaning to your first memory. So if it comes to you at some point, like what's the earliest? Can you remember being in a crib? Can you remember before 1 year old, before 2 years old, before 3 years old? Does it start around 7? You know, where are you at? There's a lot in there, and usually there's a lot of meaning and power in that first memory. Primary attachment. So whether our understanding of the world, ourselves, and the people around us begins before doing, saying, or thinking even begins. Only being. And it's shaped by how others are able to be with us. We don't understand their words. We don't know what they're saying, but we know what they feel and believe about us. Like we know if we're loved and we're safe, or if we're ignored and we're not. When we reach out, if we're held and we're comforted. And the heart is a giant like magnetic resonance. And there's interesting things that happen in a room of people. Their hearts actually start to sync up. Women, this happens as well, like in the military, when you have barracks full of women, their cycles sync up together. And people in a room together, their hearts like start to sync up and start to move in a similar rhythm. And you can actually tell who is sort of the leader, the de facto leader, and whose heart syncs to who. You can think of it like mob mentality. Everybody knows mob mentality, right? If one person starts to amp up and it amps up another person and this person, and pretty soon it's like this whole giant mob of angry people, and it'll work the opposite way as well, right? Got a mob of angry people and one calm dude there, or one calm woman there, that can bring down the whole group as well. And so I bring up this heart thing is because the instinct for babies is when they're crying is to pick them up and put them on our chest. And we put them on our chest because we're putting them heart to heart. And the baby may feel anxious, but then if you bring them to the mother or the caregiver or the father, and you feel calm and you feel loving, they feel it, and they feel it from heart to heart. And they don't have words, they don't have thoughts, they don't have maybe even feelings at this point, but something happens in there, and that nervous system starts getting regulated. And so how are they able to be with us? Or if they get nervous and anxious, do they get put down and put away? Are they then they're getting taught it's not okay to be this way? If I'm this way, I get rejected. I must change myself in order to be acceptable. And this is part of the acceptance in the group piece. You know, it is the way I am acceptable, or do I have to change myself to be accepted by others? And that's not to say never put down a crying baby. We can go into that, right? There's a million things in there. But if you are interested in it, there is a lot of research on giving some answers to that. Gabor Mate does a bunch and has just written an interesting book on it. Even stress in the mother pre-birth and the emotional environment of the mother can impact the child. and has lasting impact all the way in adulthood. So the core needs of the child is to belong to the tribe, to have a group that they are safe in, and to be able to be accepted as they are. Some of the emotional or behavioral patterns that will come out of not being okay to be as you are in the group. You're the sporty, active one in the introvert family, right? And you're yelled at for talking too much all the time and whatever it happens to be. Or the reverse. You're the quiet one in the extroverted family and you're yelled at for being a crab or a hermit or a grump or a recluse or whatever it is, right? And the message is, do I have to change who I am in order to be accepted by others? And there's a really deep survival level, because that's really the level that we're talking about here in the physiology. And is it okay to listen to my own instincts? Or do I shut that off? Is that dangerous for me? Can I trust myself? Am I trustworthy? Are my feelings trustworthy? Are my thoughts trustworthy, or do I have to ignore that in order to be accepted? That is the core foundational fundamental message and question that a child is not asking themselves, but that we do answer and do. And you can say on another level, that's your intuition. Like you shut that off, you shut your connection to yourself, a little bit of this present and awareness stuff. Yeah, I feel this way, but I can't feel this way because then I'm unacceptable to the group. And so then I cut myself off at the neck and I just go on this head level and I put on a happy face, or I put on whatever face that I need to put on to be acceptable in here, and change and ignore my own needs, what feels right to me, in order to belong to the group, to be accepted by the group. Am I acceptable the way I am? Do I have to hide how I feel or give up who I really am to have a place, to be loved, to feel safe? This question dictates our own connection to self. You can think of attachment as an oasis in the desert here, right? It allows kids safety to explore. When I know I have a caregiver here, then I can wander off. Like, it's like if my mom is my mom or my dad is sitting on the park bench at the park, well, then I'm free to explore the park. Because if I need to, I always can run back right here, right? And then as I gain strength and confidence, I can explore a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. And then eventually I can make my way back. Okay, got it. I made it back, and then again and again. When you don't have that, then I'm on the constant lookout. Where's my person? Where's my person? Is it safe? And I have to stay close, and I cling to them, because if they're random, I don't know that they're solid. I don't know that they're there. They're always going to be there. I can always count on them. They're reliable. They're trustworthy. Maybe some days they are abusive to me, and then some days they're cuddling and warm. And so I don't know. And so I'm panicked. And this is the chaos that happens, the internal turmoil that results as the chaotic parenting style, or it's almost in some ways, and I'm not saying abuse is good in any way, just so it's clear, but it's almost like if the pattern is similar, then I can learn, then at least I can know, as opposed to I never know and I can't. Yeah, having someone we can always depend on. That's secure attachment, right? That's the secure attachment is the scientific word, but really that's having someone we know we can always depend on. That's what it is. Gives us the freedom and courage to explore ourselves, explore our world, to push the boundaries a little further, knowing that safety will be there when we need it. We can leave and return without fear of losing it.
Just bringing up what you helped me with recently with the grandkids, I think is worth talking about. You know, if anybody's having any questions about how to deal with kids, grandkids, people coming in and out of their lives, Travis this is part of it. I mean, I think it's probably the most powerful, most important thing that you could do for your kids or your grandkids. If you've got questions of how do you make them mentally fit, you know, engage with Travis. He's helped me and my family walk through some of these. And one thing I wanted to double click on with that, Travis, which I didn't know and hadn't thought about it this way, but we were talking about girls ending up with daddy issues and how that happens, and whether or not you should allow the biological to visit them or not. And it came down to, well, it depends. Wait, what will mess them up is if that person's coming in and out of their life unpredictably, if they're coming and going. So it doesn't mess them up to not know they're biological. What would mess them up worse is if they were coming and going. So I thought that was fascinating, and I'm sure that there's a lot of for a mom or a dad or a grandparent, that's easy to talk about and hard to accomplish, keeping consistency of people in their lives. And then the quality of people, are they volatile and unpredictable, or are they steady? But I think the thing that was epiphany for me was, consistency and steadiness is what the child is really needing to not grow up with daddy issues. Simple, but hard to execute. But what's the best is if you're having any of those questions or doubts, just call Travis and talk it through with him. He can help you head towards the right direction.
I think there's a level of, which I'll question I'll ask later, of like, okay, what was, what happened in my life happened. And now I have a choice of, how do I want to be? What do I want to pass on? How do I want to be with my kids, my grandkids? What do I want to bring to the world now? I'm not going to dive into this. I might save this for another day, the romantic relationships. I'm just going to leave it here so you kind of know this exists. Generally, we fall on some sort of here on the on a spectrum of avoidant versus low avoidance versus high avoidance versus secure versus insecure, fearful versus not fearful. And this plays out, as Mike was bringing in there, in our adult romantic relations quite a bit. Our attachment, what's the right word? Attachment style to our parents, like what our relationship looked like, that will have a massive impact on that. And so if you are in a relationship or not in a relationship and you want to examine that, you can usually pretty easily put you and your partner in a box, in a category here. And I'm not a box guy, but I think sometimes it's helpful, and that you could probably see some patterns of, got it, I communicate this way, he has this response, or she communicates this way, I have that response. And it can help you understand why the other person is responding the way they are, and how to speak their language in a way that's more impactful and effective to them. We might dive into that later, but that's an interesting topic. Okay, so this is about when core needs are not met. I brought in a few of those examples of like the foster home things. You can say like, well, their core needs were met. They got food, they got their diapers changed, they got picked up twice a day, they got kept warm. Like, what's the problem, right? They should be fine. And I think I'm putting in here, emotional needs are physical needs. Like, they are the same. They are equally powerful. It's not like if we get food and water, we're good and we're going to come out just fine. Like, there are, he even said the randomness that Mike was bringing in. It's like, well, some goodness is better than no goodness, and there might be a level that's true, but then also when it's mixed in with this other stuff, it might actually be better to have none in there. And so there's these I guess to get out of the mindset of, well, they gave me 3 meals and a roof over my head, so like thumbs up, it was all good. Emotional needs are as powerful and shaping as physical needs. Punishing behavior versus addressing deeper needs. I think that's a thing to look at as us as parents, for those of us that are parents, and maybe as we were looking there. Are we looking to control the behavior or meet the underlying needs underneath the behavior? And addiction and attachment are very, very strongly connected. Insecure attachment many times leads to addiction, because we are leaning into that safety that we did not have, and we are finding that safety and attachment in another thing. Trauma is not what happens to us or to you. Trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of the events. Some of the results of insecure attachment is no longer trusting ourselves, feeling shame about who we are, how we feel, what we think, believe, what we're good at, what we're not good at. Disconnection from our own self, our own body, our own emotions, our ability to trust others, our view of the world. Believing, for example, believing you're only valued if you work hard, or if you serve others, or your value is what you do for others. You always have to be positive, or on time, or sharp, or productive, or beautiful. Just being the way I am, as I am, is not acceptable. I must be something different to be safe. And addiction's roots are in attachments, or in our secure or insecure attachment. And addiction is a poor solution to a real problem. Addictions stimulate the same receptors and endorphin response as secure attachment. The stimulus, whatever that addiction is for you, whether it's your cell phone, or whether it's anger, or whether it's alcohol or drugs or something else, feels like a big warm hug does from somebody that we love. It's like this big warm blanket of safety. Except afterwards, it leaves us feeling cold and in a worse place than we started. To recover is to rediscover your safe self and be able to be present again. Which is kind of what we started out talking in the beginning. The response of just grabbing for something, just filling silence, just filling time because we can't just sit and be. And to let go of the addiction is to be able to be. And then when we just be, then seeing what comes up and moving through that. Okay, I think we got about 5 minutes left. So the antidote, right? I brought this in earlier. None of this is to criticize our family or our parents or blame. It's not anybody's fault. Everybody did the best they knew how, right? But it's just about understanding and accepting what was, and understanding who we are by looking at how we were shaped, and understanding the what's me versus the conditioning that I was raised in, and maybe undo. And when we're stuck in the, I just have to try harder, maybe we're looking at the problem wrong. Maybe we're playing the wrong game. Maybe we're playing somebody else's rules. So I'll bring in this quote again. If you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. Okay, I'll give you an example from my own life on this one. I love my sons dearly, and they're really powerful. I think actually I might have shared, and I had a thought that was a thought that I didn't like, and I pushed it down, right? One of my sons was like, oh, he's such an idiot. Like, why's he doing this? And I was like, what? I don't think that about my son. He's like, that's not him. No, he's this way and he's that way. And no. And then this moment came to me. It was like, well, hey, idiot, if you don't think that, who just had that thought? It was like, right, right, yeah. Apparently I do think that because I had the thought. And then it was, oh shit, I think this about my son. And I had to let that expand. I had to sink into that. It was like, oh, that feels awful. Okay, but I feel that way. So I'm going to allow myself to feel that way and move into why I feel this way. And I found deep triggers from my own childhood of the way my brother treated me, was the way he was treating his brother. And a bunch of things emerged from that moment. And I was able to have compassion on myself, and I was able to allow that to expand and then move through it. Where if I would have been, no, I don't think that, clearly not, and he's just this, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And because I was able to embrace that feeling that was awful, a way that I don't want to feel, but I do. And now we're back to our beginning quote of the measure of a man is his ability to tolerate truth, right? And I think there was a truth in me that felt that. And if I would have kept setting that aside and denying that I felt that way, most of the time, 95% of the time, I didn't feel that way. But then that 5% comes and I snap and I'm angry and I act away towards him I don't want to. Instead of owning that part of me really does feel this way. and why I feel this way and moving through that. If you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. If you want to get rid of something, which I did, I wanted to get rid of it, you must first allow it to flourish. If you want to take something, you must first allow it to be given. This is called the subtle perception of the way things are. That's it. The way things are. It was the truth of the way things are. I do feel this way. And now I can move through it, right? The soft overcomes the hard. The slow overcomes the fast. Acceptance is the ability to be with things exactly as they are. I don't have to put rose-colored glasses on and paint my family as something it wasn't. I don't have to paint it as all black either, as Mike brought in. If we see the negatives sometimes, and sometimes we have to, we don't want to see the negatives, so we paint it over with positives. And sometimes we can't see any of the positives because we're so like blinded by the negatives, right? And I think this is the ability to be with things as they are, to tolerate the truth as it was probably some really good and beautiful things and some really horrible, horrendous things. And to be able to accept both those things is back to our two truths, which is a deep practice or belief that comes up in many of the world's like deep traditions of belief. And the core needs from childhood is to be both part of the tribe and be your authentic self. Family is a place to belong where you are seen, loved, and embraced exactly as you are. And then I think family, I say that as family, and that's the ideal for family. That's the families we want to create. And then that's also how to embrace ourselves, because I think this is where all of this ultimately goes, right? What is my relationship with myself? Do I judge, criticize, blame, shame myself? I can't control what others do. Those are all external, but I can control what I do. And what sort of internal family relationship do I have with myself? And I think my last question for the day is, what message do you want to send to the world, to your kids, to your grandkids, to your nephews, to your nieces, to the people in your world? Today's goal was to become more aware of how we were shaped by our family experiences and becoming more conscious of what we are passing on, what we are living, the rules that we are unconsciously living by. And to acknowledge that there's no right or wrong way to be a parent, no manual on how one should be, to be more aware of what message we are sending in the subtle unconscious way and bring that in line with the message we want to send. And I might say that for your life in general as well, becoming more aware of the life that you want to live and living it. Cool. That's what I've got for today. Thank you all so much for joining. I know we are at time here. If anybody's got questions that they would like to ask, I'll hang around for a few more minutes. I also would welcome the one-on-one sessions. They have been incredible. I'm deeply honored to be able to go through this process with each of you, and I'm excited to keep going through the changes that have occurred, and the transformations have been radical and profound, and I'm excited to keep going on this journey. Thank you for having me today and for sharing your time with me this morning or afternoon or whenever it is that you're listening to this. And thank you, Mike, for this opportunity. I've loved this. This has been incredible to be able to share. So thank you for creating this.
It was incredible, Travis. So that was the best one yet. And
Great.
Thank you all for the great video and audio on that. And this is going to be powerful for people for a long time, but probably the most important subject that we can talk about, right? I mean, you ended it with love thyself, really, and then you're talking about loving your intimate partners and your family, kids. That's just great. I mean, really, you really scooped the whole core of it all right in one
Cool.
One presentation. So
great,
incredible.
Great.
Thank you very much. And appreciate it. And we'll see everybody in another month or so.